Welcome to the show, everyone. It's unbelievably gorgeous out there, and it's a great day to be networking with everybody. We're live on Facebook, so hi to everybody out there. Like us and follow us. We're going to be sharing the show in just a little bit. I love talking about my show because I think it's a great show for people to get information, and that's what it's all about here. And different people that have been on. My first guest has been on with me now once before. I have with me John Even. John, tell everybody a little bit about you, what you do, and what we're going to talk about today.
Sure. Thanks, Carol, again for having me on. My name is John Even, and I'm an estate planning, probate, and business attorney here in Central Phoenix, but I help people all over the state and with any in-state and Arizona legal matters, even for out-of-state people. They may be calling in.
You've been doing this a long time.
Yes,
1992.
Yes, I started practicing in 1992. That's coming up on 29 years.
Amazing.
And in those three areas primarily. But today we're going to focus in on some business planning issues.
Well, I want to talk about that because it's so important. I started looking at your questions, and it's so great for people to get this information. So I want you to talk a little bit about how you work a lot of people, obviously, in business owners that are in drafting their business documents for them. And what kind of documents then do they need?
Okay. There's a lot. It kind of depends on where they are, but there's business documents to get them set up, whether it's formation documents for a corporation or an LLC. Sometimes they're adding a business partner and they need purchase documents to make sure that's documented well. Sometimes we need to do documents to deal with business succession planning. You know, what happens when I pass away or when I want to get out? How do I pass those on to somebody else? So all of that are the types of documents that I do. And it's important that people plan accordingly.
How important is it? I want to start with the beginning because we don't want to think about the end for a second, even though we know that's important, right? But I want to talk about the beginning first. So there's a lot of people that start businesses and now they're going and they're going and they're going and they forget that they should have probably done something like that. Does it matter how long or is it ever too late or whatever, just for all the paperwork in the beginning?
You know, it's a great question, and I help people kind of clean it up. So I call it, again, supposing they started the business, 15 years ago, they got it up and running, maybe they did their LLC documents on their own, and then they added a partner, and a couple other things have happened, and the documents aren't quite up to date. And what do they do then? Well, they need to get them updated, make sure everything's been filed properly with Arizona Corporation Commission, and I can help them through that process and make sure they get exactly where they need to be.
Now, fast forward, okay, we've now been in business now, you said 15 years, maybe even more. How important is it for you to also now have your paperwork in place for, you said, business succession?
Yeah, business succession planning really has to do with what happens when you want to sell the business, or when you want to get out of the business, or when you want to sell the business to your partner. How does that all work? What's your exit strategy, so to speak, with regard to that? And I help people kind of work through that decision. And it's a complicated decision. It kind of depends a little bit on is there any family member that wants to take on the business? And if so, then they may want to pass it on to that family member, maybe bring the family member in and then slowly sell it to them over time. Or do they want to do something if there's no family members that are interested at all, they may just want to position the business for sale to a third party and then just sell it at some point.
And you help them with all of that. I want to get out your information. When you work with people, do you do free consultations?
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
I'm happy to meet with people to give them an idea of who I am and what I can do for them.
Well, let me tell you who he is. First of all, he's a 2021 best lawyer in America. America, you guys. And you're also, that's in trust and estates, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and you're also top 100 attorney 2020 magazine. He does free consultations, second opinions too. This is really important if you're listening to this. A lot of people need to dust off what they have, right? And kind of look at them again. Because like you said, I mean, you could have started a business and guess what? Maybe you get a divorce. Right? You got remarried. You didn't do your you didn't check them out again.
Yep.
That's always really bad. But you work statewide. You said that you work with anyone here in the state. And so your phone number to call is 602-277-7000. You can check him out either on LinkedIn at John Even, or you can also go to his website, which is John Even, just like Even Steven, johneven.com. Okay, let's go back to some of these things. How does someone determine then when a business owner needs, whether to sell their business or pass it on? How do they determine that?
Well, there's three different options. I mean, you can either sell it to a third party, build it up, sell it to a third party at the right time. You can sell it to your other business partners if there's multiple business partners, and usually you do something called a buy-sell agreement in order to do that. Or you can pass it on to your family, primarily through a trust. That's probably the best way to do that. But those are the three different things. And usually it takes some conversation with the client to find out what their goals are, what they want to accomplish, how long they want to be in the business. Sometimes, is there anybody else who's interested in taking over the business?
I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, here's what I say. I think that people really need to make this conversation a much easier conversation than they do. I think this is really important. I know my dad, he had owned a business, and I mean, the money talked, and so, he didn't hand it down to us, which, okay, that's okay. But, I think having that conversation with your family, sitting there, talking to them, and finding out, well, maybe, because you could think all the time that they're going to take over. Maybe not, right?
Maybe not. And you have to have the discussions with them. And sometimes I've even had other family members come in to really kind of work through some of these issues, because sometimes the family hasn't gotten into the details that they need to. I mean, the day-to-day details. Who would run the business? Who'd be in charge of things? Would there be any oversight? Would there be a board? How would that all work? If something happened to you, tomorrow, and these are difficult conversations to have, but if something happened to you tomorrow, what would happen? Who would open the shop and do those kind of things?
Right. So important, though. We don't like to talk about it. We put our heads in the sand, but important to have the conversation. His phone number is 602-277-7000. Check him out. It's johneven.com. I want to go back to some of these other things. Like, is it true that without proper planning, most businesses will go into probate?
Yes, it is true. Well, in Arizona, you need to know a little bit about probate and how that works. In Arizona, the probate threshold for a business interest is $75,000. If it's over $75,000, then it's likely it's going to go through a probate, and if you don't do the proper planning. Now, what's the proper planning?
I was going to say, what do you plan for? How do you plan?
Well, it's kind of some of the things we were just talking about. If you have more than one member in that LLC, you can do a buy-sell agreement. That's an agreement that kind of lays out what would happen if you passed away. If you have just no additional person that's an owner, you're the sole owner, and you want to pass it on to your kids, well, you put that kind of documentation in the trust. You just say, okay, here's how we're going to handle the business. But you need to plan for it. Without doing either one of those, and if you pass away and you're the sole owner, then that business is going to go through a probate.
So it kind of stands true, too. Let's say we have some family members. Maybe you don't want them to be even taken in, a little bit over, or maybe you don't feel confident, right? There might be some reasons, too. You might be older. A lot of us older folks had children when we were older now. So, now you have younger kids. Maybe you don't think they'd be even prepared to do something like that. So it's their wishes, what they want, all about that.
Absolutely.
Even though, when we talk about estate planning and all that, we used to think mostly about ourselves and what our wishes are, making it easier. This also will make it easier on the kids as well.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
On the family, but also for you, peace of mind, knowing that it's all put together. And John, you've been doing this since 1992, and he's an expert in the field. So we have a lot of business owners that listen. We have a lot of people that you said the last time that you were on, that when people that live out of state that actually have business here, that you actually specialize in those kind of people.
Yeah, it's in particular on the probate side. Absolutely. I mean, mom and dad may have lived here. They may have grown up here, but then they moved away. And then later on, mom and dad pass away, and they need some help with the probate issue here.
And does it matter what kind of business, really, at all?
No. As far as the business side, no.
No?
That doesn't matter at all.
No, it doesn't matter at all. Now, we're going to go to a break. When we come back, we're going to talk further. He's located in Central Phoenix, but he works with people statewide. You can check him out on his website. It's johneven, like evensteven.com. You can call him. He does free consultations. His phone number is 602-277-7000. Hang tight. We'll be back in just a minute.
All right. You're amazing.
Me? Oh my God, thank you. So we're going to keep on talking here,
All right.
okay? And because we're live on Facebook.
Okay.
What do you find? I know you've got some of these that we're going to go into on the air, and I'm going to do that when we do that now. When we come back, what is the number one thing that people make, the first mistake that they always make? Not doing anything?
Well, and that's kind of like it was last week when we talked
Right.
about probate issues.
Right.
Setting up a will and not doing anything. That's the first thing. I would say with regard to businesses, I mean, two of the primary mistakes that people make when they're setting up a business is, number one, not setting up an LLC or a corporation. So, so that they don't have the liability protection. And if something goes wrong, it all comes back on them personally. And number two is not getting the proper advice and advisors in place. It's not just attorneys. I mean, you need a good attorney, you need a good CPA or a tax person. You usually need to deal with insurance issues. There's lots of different people that
components
to it. You might need a banker, you might need a real estate person. So you need to have good professionals kind of around you to help you make good decisions as a business owner.
As a business owner, do you also help them with deciding how do they know whether they should be an LLC or an S corporation?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
How do because you have to know those kinds of things. And
yeah.
I mean, some people do start off one way and then change, right? I think I did. I changed at some point to be, I started off in an LLC and then it changed to a C corporation. I think it's called C or S corporation.
An S corporation.
Yes.
Well, and the nice thing about an LLC is that you can make a change like that. You can treat it as
right.
one way, a disregarded entity or a partnership, but then you can switch it to an S corporation by filing some papers. I mean, you can't go back and forth all the time.
So you've been doing this a long time, right? And
yes,
most of the kind of businesses that you work with are what kind of businesses?
They're mostly small to medium-sized businesses that are closely held here in Arizona.
Which we have a lot of them.
And most of them have revenues from maybe $500,000 a year all the way up to $50 million a year. So I mean, that kind of range is what we're talking about. Not necessarily the mom and pop shops that are just starting out, but after they've got it up and running, and then.
What about franchise owners?
Franchise owners, that's an interesting question. Franchise owners, I have reviewed franchise agreements for them. A lot of it's pretty tied into those franchise agreements. And
franchises have changed quite a bit because, I'm also seeing more franchises than always the DQ,
Yeah,
There's some of them are out there that I just called a doctor on call, and I thought it was just some guy that started his on call, It's a franchise.
It's a franchise.
It's unbelievable.
I mean, it is. You got to be careful with franchise agreements.
Yeah.
Because it's all in the fine print in terms of.
Oh, I'm sure.
The revenues and how that works.
Absolutely. Here we go.
But the even better legal.
What's that?
The even better even better. What, John? Sorry. Go ahead.
Welcome back, everyone. We're talking with John Even, and we're talking about getting prepared, planning for your businesses. People, not just yourselves, but your businesses. The people that are in business need to make sure that we have all of these things taken care of before anything, God forbid, happens. Number one, you don't want anything to go into probate, really, honestly. And if you plan, then you won't these things will not happen, correct?
Correct.
And that's where you come in. I was talking to you at the break when we were talking to everybody on Facebook, and I asked you, obviously, what was the number one mistakes that people make?
I'd say the number one mistake people make is they try to do it on their own, and they don't get the proper advice, not only from a lawyer's perspective, but also from tax things and insurance things. And not getting that good advice at the front end can often cost a lot more at the back end.
Right. I'm going to say this right on the air. I don't care. Okay. Legalese and all of those, things where you go up on to Dr. Google and we go up there and we try and do these things ourselves. It is dangerous, actually, to do it that way. Right? Because, if something really small, maybe. But honestly, I think you really need to talk to an expert when it comes to making sure that, especially if you own a business, don't you agree?
Yeah. Oh, I know. And you got to think about this too. I mean, your business is probably the biggest asset that you have. You've been working your lifetime to build it up, and it's probably the biggest asset you're going to pass on to your kids. And when you think of it like that, would you want to make a mistake, that you could have avoided? By not hiring somebody who knows what they're doing.
Okay, so going into probate is the worst thing. What are some of the other things that could happen?
Well, I think the biggest thing is, if it's not probate, it could be a dispute, it could be a lawsuit, because you don't have proper business documents and you have a falling out with one of your business partners. I've been involved in many of those disputes.
I bet.
And if you don't have good documentation, or sometimes you have no documentation, and it's all, well, he said this or this was our deal. But everybody changes their mind later on.
I think the worst part of it is, let's say you were married before, and that ex-wife now gets it all because you didn't put the new wife in on the paperwork.
Right. Or you didn't have a buy-sell agreement to say if there's a divorce, that's a triggering event in the buy-sell agreement, so that I can buy you out. and I don't have to be partners with your ex-spouse.
So, you do free consultations. Listen up, people. This is important. And there's a lot of us out there that have, even us women, right on women, that have started our own businesses, right? It's not just for men here. We're talking a lot of women who, you may not think about these things. And this is what I love about the show. The bunch you bring out this information and somebody says, you know what? I don't know, maybe I should check into that. Maybe I haven't done that. Maybe I need to do this. And so that's where this comes in. You could call him direct. He does do free consultations. He's been doing this since 1992, and he does specialize in this area. The number to call him is 602-277-7000. His website is JohnEven.com. You can also go up onto LinkedIn and check him out there at John Even as well. He works statewide, and second opinions, I think they're really important. I think second opinions are very much, you do them a lot?
Yeah. Well, a lot of times what happens is they're just concerned about their documents right now for whatever reason. Whether it's
right, they just heard there's this show and they're going, oh my God, I better make sure. Go ahead.
There we go. Whether it's estate planning documents or business planning documents, or they say there was an error made, or this isn't right, or this is old. Maybe this was true 20 years ago or 15 years ago, but it's changed quite a bit now, and we're not sure what to do now. And we want to have somebody else take a look at it. Just give us advice and say, what do you think we should do?
Has COVID taken a big stand-in with what you're dealing with right now, especially with businesses and their the ownerships and making sure everything? Have you had has it come into play?
I think it's kind of turned people's attention up quite a bit to planning. Because for one, they never know, but even then, they want to make sure everything's in place just in case.
It's very important, just in case. I want to ask you, how often should people then review their documents?
Okay, that's a great question. With regard to the business planning documents, I recommend about every 3 to 5 years, depending on your business. We can do it just to review the basic documents that you have, mainly the formation documents in terms of the ownership of who owns the company. But then, of course, if something happens in the meantime, that doesn't mean you couldn't call sooner. So if you've said, well, I'm bringing a partner on, and we want to take a look at these again, certainly you can give me a call sooner than that. But 3 to 5 years is the general window.
So what is a buy-sell agreement, and how does it work?
Okay. We talked a little bit about this, but the buy-sell agreement, if you have a company, I'll just use an LLC because everybody kind of knows what an LLC is. And say you have an LLC that has more than one member. It has 2 or 3 or 4 members. And in the operating agreement or in another separate agreement, a buy-sell agreement basically says what happens if certain triggering events happen. The biggest one being what happens if somebody passes away. What happens to their interest? And how can the others buy out their interest so that it doesn't pass on to somebody they don't want it to pass on to? It could also be incapacity. It could also be what happens if somebody just wants to get out. Those kind of things are all kind of handled in a buy-sell agreement.
We don't think about passing away so much. I think people just don't, who wants to, right? But also, who's going to think about the fact that anything can happen? So, that person can become incapacitated. And then they have to have things in place because if that happens, maybe they don't even have family here. And your business partner has to take care of that. Forget calling the hospital and checking in on things because they're not going to let you talk to them. Because Amazon doesn't let me talk to me when I call them. So, right? Do you agree with all of this?
Yeah, I agree. Unless you have a power of attorney for yourself.
Well, they should have something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I noticed that you wrote a blog entitled, do your business documents talk to estate planning documents? Do they talk to one another? Do they jive?
Exactly. And it's, obviously they don't talk to each other. I'm just trying to make sure that they're linked together so that they work seamlessly. And that's, because I do the estate planning documents and the business planning documents, I can make sure that the two work together well.
So I got to ask you, somebody has their estate planning documents. You're going to do a second opinion, okay? They've put it all into one document. Is that possible or no? They have to have separate.
You generally are going to have separate documents because the estate planning documents is talking about you and your family, what happens to your assets when you pass away. The business planning documents, that's more talking about what happens to the business interest, your shares in the business if you pass away.
Do you have people that come to you that have had it in one document, and you got to say no, we got to do a separate one? Or do they already know?
Yeah, you know, I mean, again, they really aren't handled in the same document.
Right, so it's definitely just
But I
changes.
have had several situations where somebody has one business attorney and one estate planning attorney, and they were different attorneys, and then and the two documents aren't talking to each other at all, which could lead to things like probate, could lead to litigation, could lead to confusion at the very least.
So that's where you come in, because you're one of the same. You're an attorney.
Exactly, which can help just tie the two together.
Right. Now, his phone number to call, he does free consultations, and he works statewide. His phone number is 602-277-7000. His website is johneven.com. You can also link him, you're on LinkedIn as well. I wanted to ask you, too, on your website, you have the blog, so they can go and see all of the things that you write about. You have white papers that you've written. You've been doing this a long time. All of the information up there?
Yes, and including that blog, do my business documents, talk to my estate planning documents. That's on there as well.
That'll be on there too. It's johneven.com. So let's go back to some of these other things. We talked a little bit about common mistakes, the number one. What about the top two or three, real quick? Might not get to three. Go ahead.
We might not get to three. Not having a written agreement between business partners is a big one. And I talked a little bit about that. What happens, even things like who's going to be responsible for certain things in terms of being a manager and having certain responsibilities. How much are people putting into the business? What's their percentages going to be? If you don't have a good written business document that lays all that out, and then there's a dispute, you can imagine what happens. It ends up in court, and everybody's saying, well, here's what I thought the deal was, here's what I thought the deal was, and it's a mess. So not having a good business agreement between business partners is one. Not having documents that talk to each other. We've mentioned that a little bit about estate planning documents need to be able to talk to the business planning documents so that they work together. And then just not doing the planning for what happens to you if God forbid something happened. Do you have a buy-sell agreement in place? Do you have something in your trust that's going to say here's how I want it to be handled? So all those kind of things are the key things that I help people with the planning on.
And it doesn't matter how long they've been in business.
Doesn't matter.
Most people don't even have plans for this, do they?
They don't. Well, most people they start thinking about this a few years into their business.
And then, when they were thinking about retiring, oh, well, maybe I should do this, right? But we should really start right away. If you haven't, it's okay, because he's here to help. That's what he'll do for you. What are your final words?
The final words is just it's important to think about it. As a business owner, you've worked hard your whole life to build up that business. You want to make sure it's protected, and you want to make sure that if something ever happened to you, that there's a plan in place to deal with that.
He works statewide. He's been doing it since 1992. He do a second opinion with him as well. You can call him. He does a free consultation. That number is 602-277-7000. It's johneven.com.